Welcome. New Year's Eve day. Dr. Jason Dean, BraveTV, your source for health, freedom, and knowledge. It's December 31st, New Year's Eve. We're here. Tomorrow we won't be here for show. We'll probably take tomorrow off because I have to do a family day. That's what I'm told. Not allowed to do anything but a family day other than work in the morning before they wake up. But we are heading into 2025, and there's a report out that I have not been paying attention to at all, which is I have not been paying attention to at all the fog thing. Do you have fog where you are?
We do not.
Okay. I wasn't sure because I was like, because the Florida people were saying something about it. I'm like, I don't see anything.
Haven't seen any fog here.
Okay. What do you? So I have done little to zero research on this, Chris. Like, what are you seeing from the fog? What are they saying?
I haven't looked deep into it either. There's some reports of people who claim that they got sick after being in the fog, got sore throats, and other people have really run with it and said that it's a big government conspiracy how they're going to poison all of us. So,
Nicolette, have you read anything about the fog, Nicolette?
I think it's all stupid what I'm reading. I mean, we went from negative 11 degrees when I left for Florida 2 weeks ago to almost 60 something this week. Of course, there's going to be fog. It's not because of the drones. And as far as sore throats and stuff, everybody ate a ton of sugar over Christmas and was around vaccinated people. It's not the fucking fog.
When someone said fog, I saw a couple posts and I didn't even look into one. I was just busy with other stuff, but two, I'm like, and this is the funny part. I walked outside and I'm like, man, there's no fog here. So what am I going to do about it? Right. And and Chris, Nicolette does a pretty good job of staying out of this, which I have to work better on. I'm better at it, but she's pretty good at it. You, not because you want to, but just because obviously the show. How do you deal with the everyday 24? Like, it's always a new fucking topic, like every 2 days. Like, the next thing is like the very idea that a former president campaigning to be president again and then becomes president was literally shot in open air several months ago. And that is still not, that topic's gone. Like, that was gone 2 weeks later. Like, how do you deal with the insanity of this?
Well, tonight's episode of Survival Dispatch News is the top 50 fake news items from 2024. So
that's awesome.
The topic at hand was not that hard to put that list together. The other part to it is I think that some of our abilities to detect bullshit is innate. It's just part of who you are, built into your DNA. The DISC assessment, which is an assessment of your personality traits. The guy who did that says that 70% of your behavior is based on your DNA. 30% is called adapted behavior based on being a product of your environment. I'm in no place to argue that. So I would probably say that the more time people spend sourcing information, the better they get at it, right? Mm-hmm. So years ago, I wrote a piece of software that I ran on my laptop that recorded everything that I read. And I ran a very robust ad blocker, so it wasn't counting words from advertising towards actual content. And it would average between 250 and 300,000 words a day, 7 days a week. I haven't run that piece of software in years, but I suspect it's even higher than that now. And I think that the value of your show, our show, Todd Callender's show, is that we cut through the BS for people and save them a whole bunch of time to say, look, this is what's really going on. Mm-hmm. The reason I haven't invested any time in the fog stuff is because I agree 100%. I don't think it's believable. I don't think that the fog is some big conspiracy theory. So, and I could be wrong. I'm not saying that I'm right all the time, but my point is this: when you read 250,000+ words per day, you start to develop a knack for saying this is bullshit. Wait a minute, this has legs. One of the other things I look for as well is that if the Mockingbird media are all saying the same thing, I immediately discount it as complete and utter bullshit. And the next question is, where does the money lead to?
Yeah, no,
Simple as that.
when the drone story happened, I was at my wife's event, and so it was actually crazy a weekend because it was very typical of me, not typical of me. I was only on my phone maybe 10% of the time. I was 90% of the time talking to people, like being in the event, helping her. I had to speak a bunch of stuff, and so immediately like Sunday hits, and everyone's like, "What do you think about the drones?" And I put a post out. I was like, I literally know nothing about the drones. I haven't looked at it at all. I've seen some posts and tweets go by about it. I have not looked into it. And quite honestly, I have noted, unless they're nuking the area and blowing shit up and I'm in danger or somebody else I know is in danger or the world's going down, until I get more information, like, why am I looking into this and spending energy on something? And then right after that is when you and I talked, Chris, and you sent over like a slide or two PowerPoint slides of like, this is what we know so far, and this is what could be reality based off of it, and this is what we know is just bullshit at that point. That alone, your work with that was brilliant.
Well, I appreciate that. So, I mean, at the end of the day, after looking at it from a multiple different angles, that was a government psyop, so that the citizens would get behind this idea of creating more onerous legislation that provided more opportunities and legal opportunities to spy on us is concerned, right? And it's actually escalated since then. Now they've made an argument where they say, um, because of these drones, we need to have the legal authority to monitor people's communications on their phone 24/7 because they may have drone applications on their phone to control drones, which could cause problems at airports. But because this problem's so big, we don't just want access to people's phones at the airport. We want it across the country, 24/7, 365, any location. The whole drone thing was predicated on making people believe it's a big boogeyman, and therefore they need to give up their civil liberties for the government to pry into it even more. Quick question for you. Do you know why the drone story has completely fallen off the radar in the past week?
Take a shot, Nicolette.
Well, I did see that they had some government contracts of testing drones in that area in the last two years or so. I guess it happened again last year, and nobody reported on it, so that kind of dismissed the stuff because people are like, "Oh, they're just testing them in that area."
I would say that the drone BS dropped off of the legacy media's radar in the past week because no government employees work over the holidays.
That too. Yep.
Seriously.
When we found out that
over the holidays,
when we found out that like 6% of the federal government like shows up to work and like 1%, I don't remember that number. I don't know if it was Vivek or Elon that threw that out. Like, dude, that's insane to me. How does that even occur on a daily? I don't even get that.
Well, I would argue that that's years and years of mismanagement and a culture that where there's no accountability required, where it just snowballed and grew into this beast that we have today, where federal government employees, like you said, only 6% of them work out of an office, a government office. Just imagine what the cost is for all the real estate that we've built for these people over the years, and it's not being utilized. And they're full of themselves, right? They know that they're untouchable because they've never been held to account. That's how.
It's so incredible. Yeah.
Can I go back to the fog for just a second?
You can, free reign, go for it.
Okay. Well, because people, and we've covered it too, we covered it a little bit yesterday about the polar vortex and this Arctic blast that's coming, and Florida may possibly see snow and stuff. That just debunks the fog theory even further, because if people pay attention to why that Arctic blast is happening based off of the currents and stuff that are in the oceans and the temperatures, it's similar to, say, a tsunami wave when it sucks out water and then it comes back exponentially. Right now you have a heat up of the temperature, and then it's going to blast into cold. So if people paid attention to why that Arctic blast is happening in the currents of the ocean, they would understand why there's fog right now.
Yeah. So I actually told my wife last night, I said, because I've been looking at this over the last few days because there's actually something that we need to be concerned. I don't want to say concerned on, but look at it, like especially with like what's coming to Florida. Like when I saw the news that in the next couple of weeks it could get, I mean, I don't think it's going to, but they saying it could get as low as like 10 degrees in Central Florida. Most likely it's going to be 30 or 40, but we still have to be on guard. And I said to her, I go, okay, not that that's never happened before, but that's actually problematic because obviously we have to worry about pipes at that point. Florida's not prepared for this stuff. I said, but here's the kicker. What's really happening here is the actual Gulf Stream in the water is cooling down, which is not a good thing. And I told her, I said, there's absolutely weather manipulation. We know that without a doubt, but it's not all just weather manipulation. The weather is going to continue to get worse and worse. And the reason why is because we're destroying the environment. They're manipulating things. They're screwing with the ionosphere, which changes. It's not for global warming. They're screwing with other stuff. But what's happening is the weather is going to get more extreme. I mean, that's even biblical. That talks about extreme weather. This is going to start. Our ecosystem is essentially starting to collapse on us. The hurricanes will get worse. The cyclones will get worse. Tornadoes across the Midwest. Like, the more you have less land and the more you have a desert condition, and the worse it gets. So this polar vortex, we should keep an eye on and learn from it because that's going to continue to get worse over the next several years until we change our actual environment. So that stuff in my world, like, sure, fog is a good headline, but what people aren't looking at is the science of what's actually happening and how much this actually impacts not just the U.S. but the entire globe. I mean, food production. The Bible talks about famine long term. Well, how do you get famine? Yeah, they can screw with stuff. They can GMO stuff. What's worse is if you can't grow crops because the weather just doesn't allow it. The soil doesn't allow it. Now, Chris, that's a massive problem.
Yeah, I mean, our food supply is under attack on multiple different fronts, right? I mean, how many hundreds, if not thousands now, of food processing plants have burned down? There was another one in Alabama a couple nights ago.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, a huge chicken operation.
Jesus.
So
I didn't see that.
You've got attacks on food processing plants. You've got regulations out the frickin' yin yang. You got the Chinese buying farms and then shutting them down. You got Bill Gates doing the same thing. You've got legislators arguing for all these reasons on why we have to stop the cows from farting, which is complete and utter insanity and bullshit. I honestly believe that in the not too distant future, you're going to see some pretty extreme food shortages, and it won't just be in other parts of the world. It'll be here as well.
I don't disagree. And we talk about bringing manufacturing and everything back to the U.S., which obviously is fantastic, but that is actually a long-term goal. Like, you can't, I take Florida for instance. Like, if you drive up and down, and you know this probably, Chris, because if you drive from like Daytona to, let's say, Tampa, which we do often back and forth, and sure, along I-4, there's a lot of manufacturing. There's a lot of buildings being put up. You can tell they're going to be inventory areas, warehouses, etc. But here's the issue: you can't do that overnight. It doesn't take 3 months, 6 months. It might take a year plus to actually put something up, even if you're really fast. So therefore, we nationalize. We bring everything back home. That's okay, wonderful. We're not current. We don't even have the infrastructure. Even if you put up the manufacturing, we have a airline problem. We have airport problem. The Orlando airport, like, it's good for the volume, but it's already outdated, like, long time ago. So
Orlando is very outdated compared to other airports.
Chris, it's gonna take 10 to 20 years just to get the infrastructure up. Would you not agree?
So the industrial, call it, boom that's been happening on I-4 is predicated on distribution centers, not on manufacturing.
Correct.
So it doesn't indicate things being manufactured here. So we reached parity with China on manufacturing costs about 10 years ago here in the Southeast. And I was involved with a couple groups that were at the county and state level and going outside of the state to encourage manufacturers to come here, manufacturers from New York in particular, because of the egregious taxes and regulations. So I'll give you a good example. There was a company in Long Island, 3 generations, that makes all of the hand tools for Mac tools and Snap-on tools.
Okay.
And so but they manufactured them on the metal side. Then they would go across the river to New Jersey There was an extruder there who would put the handles on them. Then they would get shipped to the distribution centers for Mac Tools, Snap on, etc. Right? The guy ended up somehow meeting our director of economic development here in Ormond Beach and said, "Look, I would love to bring my business to Florida because Cuomo just went on the news and said that if you don't support his policies and you support Republicans, you should just leave New York." And he said, "So I've had enough of his bullshit. I'm going to leave New York, but I can't come to Florida, manufacture hand tools, and have to ship them all the way to New Jersey to have the handles put on them before they even go out to distribution. I'll lose the contract with Snap on and Mac." So the city sent a team to go talk to this guy in New Jersey and said, "Here's the deal. We're going to give the tool manufacturer 10 years, no property taxes, and a bunch of other incentives. And we're going to help finance a building that was just built, that's never been occupied, where there's more than enough square footage for you and him. Plus, we'll pay to relocate your entire business. Will you please come to Florida?" And they did. And
Good.
that business has grown exponentially in the past 10 years because they have everything they need. They build the hand tools. They go to another portion in the same building. They have the plastic extrusions for the handles put on them. They go out to distribution. So going out to distribution, look at this area.
You also massively lower prices there because it's not being shipped all over the United States.
Yeah. Well, we're one city north of Daytona Beach, but we essentially have I-95 north and south, I-4 east and west. We have all kinds of airports in this area. We have all kinds of ports in this area. It actually, from a distribution perspective, this is a very palatable place to be. But here's the problem with the manufacturing stuff. We destroyed and disassembled our supply chain for many years. So the problem I just described exists countless times for other industries and verticals where these companies that are still hanging on in the Northeast can't move to here because of that lack of a supply chain. So to build that supply chain, there's been a very concerted effort here in Central Florida for the past 15 years to build a supply chain, and we're still nowhere near where we need to be. And that's what I was getting at is, so our cost to manufacture here in the Southeast reached parity with China 10 years ago, but we don't have the supply chain. So it doesn't matter if the costs are the same. So what I'm getting at there is your labor costs, everything related to producing the products here in Florida is the same as what it is in China. The difference is that China has to bear all the shipping costs to get it to come across the Pacific, and which is now you end up at parity. You know, the cost to basically get the goods finished here on the ground is the same whether it's there or here. They have a supply chain. We don't have a supply chain like we used to. Good example would be CPUs, right? We invented CPUs. We owned that market for years. Only 10 years ago, 37% of the world's microprocessors were manufactured in the United States. That number is 10% now. So, and the vast majority is in Taiwan. And that it's got China's interest in Taiwan has nothing to do with politics or anything else. It has everything to do with the semiconductor business.
Oh, so, yeah.
So, you know, this is go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's the ugliness of the situation.
Yeah, it definitely is ugly, but we had a conversation about a week or so ago. Dr. Dean and I were kind of going back and forth as far as like how I see things happening and the incentives to build here. And that Florida company, well, now Florida company, is a good. That's a great example of the incentives to produce. And we saw a lot of this with this past week with the whole H-1B visas and stuff, and everybody's like going back and forth. And I said, but this is a problem when you don't have people in the workforce necessarily producing. Just because people are saying like, oh, Americans work hard, a lot of them work 80 plus hours a week. There's a difference between, oh, I work my ass to the bone, paycheck to paycheck, to I produce something. And well, I'm not a fan of like UBIs and stuff. I don't agree with that. We still have to get America to a point where they're free to produce. They like their jobs. They're not wanting to quit and all this other shit. So we have to give them the incentive to get there, unfortunately, because we have such a broken system. And I'm not trying to go the socialist route, but as we're talking about this manufacturing issue, yesterday and the day before, I was looking up a lot of Carter's policies. This has been decades and decades of socialist stuff that has taken us out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
With the
100%.
Panama Canal, with the shortage on copper. I was looking up all the different places that produce uranium yesterday. Um, we're we're not topping anything anymore, like anything. So we have to get
You know
America
that from the
back to that.
technology standpoint, Chris. You
Yeah,
saw that in tech.
Yeah, I mean, I'm adamantly against H-1B visas, have been forever and a day. And
yeah,
here's the thing: you can hire a developer, like just say, stay in the tech world for a second. You can hire developers in India and Pakistan for pennies on the dollar versus hiring Americans. But you pay them peanuts to send you monkeys. So the quality of work is not at the same level that we would expect. But the delta is so big between what it would cost for a skilled American versus one of them that we hire additional people to go behind them and clean up their mess. And you're still
yeah.
increasing your margins and everything that goes with it. But H-1B visas have been abused not just by the tech industry. Amazon just hired
Oh yeah.
10,000
Yeah.
warehouse workers through H-1B. And, for years I heard people in the business world say, well, it's because Americans don't want to do these jobs. And my response was always the same. It's not that Americans don't want to do the jobs. It's that Americans aren't doing that job for $5 an hour. Get bent.
I
Do
will
we have
You know,
do
you,
definitely.
do we have a problem though in the fact that we have an underskill, like we have a problem in America in the fact that we don't have enough skill sets in Americans' hands. Is that also, how does that weigh in? Because that's my problem with it. Like, sure, you can,
so
like, if I'm a developer standpoint, like, we just, America is not smart right now, and that's a big problem. And I'm not trying to throw America down the rabbit hole, but the problem is, if you do have somebody from another country who's freaking smart and they know they're doing and they have a different culture, but our country needs to be brought up to that level so we can build skill sets.
So we have two broken generations after us, and there's always
Agreed.
outliers. So I'm not saying it's across the board, but Gen X has been the economic workhorse of America for the
Yep.
past 30 years.
Yeah.
And to this day, those of us who are Gen Xers are the ones who work 80, 90, 100 hours a week.
Uh-huh.
And
Correct.
we were brought up with that type of work ethic. But the generations after us are victims of the asymmetrical or irregular warfare that's being waged against us now for decades on behalf of China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, those guys. So what we've done is we've set expectations for people by giving them participation trophies. And I'm not trying to oversimplify, but we've created these entitled generations who don't have our
Mhm.
work ethic.
Okay.
And then you compound that by their entire education is centered around things like gender and diversity and all this rainbow flags and all the bullshit that goes with it, while other countries are teaching their children STEM subjects.
Yep.
Yep.
Have a look at North Korea and China for their elementary and middle school kids assembling and disassembling and cleaning and reassembling firearms. That's
Yep.
a skill that they teach them. I mean, we're so far off what we used to be. Think of it like, I've got a few years on you, but when we grew up, Votech was a really big thing,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and
Huge. That was big in my high school, man.
I don't know what
it
that is.
barely vocational technology.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I'm not surprised that you don't know, because part of this irregular
I'm a
warfare
millennial.
was to squash
Yeah.
these tangible skills from being acquired.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So,
why that's
in other words,
I brought up the A thing, because sorry, we see both sides of it. Dr. Dean and I ourselves have tried to hire American jobs first when it
Dude,
comes to the websites,
it was horrible.
and it's exponentially more expensive. They, want being paid by the hour. They drag their feet on projects, and it's
And it
horrible.
was also
To the
garbage results.
Yeah, garbage results. And I am a millennial, and I don't consider myself like a grouping in with those people. But the biggest problem, because I see it on both sides, half the people that I went to school with that did go on to college and stuff got useless fucking degrees, were sold such a that victim
false
mentality
bill of
of, oh,
goods.
you guys deserve mental health days. American people don't deserve to be slave jobs and stuff like that. A job that's 40 hours a week isn't asking much. Let's be honest. Most of them don't work. They maybe work, what, 3 hours a day out of that 9 to 5 day. So that's my problem with it, is we have a overhaul that we need to do on the work ethic
Agreed.
of Americans in order for us to be able to. I understand that it's been taken advantage of, the H-1B visas, but in order for us to get back to that point, Americans need to stop being so entitled. Like I was saying with the graphic design jobs, that was one of the number one things when I was graduating high school. Everybody's like, oh, I'm going to go into business management. I'm going to be a graphic designer. Graphic designer was a huge one because we
It's
were
called
promised this
Canva.
huge
It's called
check.
Canva. Anybody can do it now.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So I'm not going to pay $5,000 for somebody to create a logo. Sorry, I'm not. At this point, there's no need to.
Yeah, I
Yep.
don't disagree. So years ago, I put together a process for recruiting, hiring, and onboarding people. And I'll just give you two tidbits out of that. Number one, I can go through a stack of resumes this high in a matter of 3 or 4 minutes and tell you who
Mhm.
deserves interviews and who doesn't. And every time I get my hands on something like that, I'll end up with maybe 3 candidates for an interview. I don't give a shit what their name is, what their race is, or anything like that. If you send a resume, CV, cover letter today, and you have spelling mistakes with spell check on every freaking computer out there, I'm not hiring you, and I'm not putting you in front of my customers. So, and there's a number of criteria that I look for. Spelling mistakes is number one. Grammar mistakes is number two. Not addressing a cover letter to the appropriate person means they didn't take the time to research who the decision maker was. So those are all reasons. And then I'll share something with you that speaks to Nicolette's point there. Years ago, one of the people I worked with, who was maybe 10 years older than me, his favorite question in an interview was, if you were an animal, what animal would you be and why would you choose to be that animal? So I started using that about 20 years ago. And I have hired or dismissed people based on their answer to that one question. I had a guy he was very quiet and to himself, and I asked him at the end of the first interview. I said, "If you're an animal, what animal would you be, and why would you be that animal?" And he paused and thought for a minute. And he says, "I'd be a dolphin." He said because they're very quiet and they only speak up when they have something to say, and they're really intelligent. And I had to say to this guy, because I was working in a fractional role, right, a fractional VP of sales. I had to say to this guy, "Look, you're way above the caliber of this company. I wish you the best of luck, but you won't be happy here. It won't challenge you." But listen to this one. We were looking for one of my clients was looking for a person who could do a combination of IT and software development. They're not the same thing. Trying to find somebody to wear both hats is not an easy task. We found this girl, and she checked every single box on the qualifications, and on paper she looked great. So I've always done first interviews either over Zoom or a phone call. So we get to the end of the interview, and I said to her, I said, "Well, one last question. If you were an animal, what animal would you be, and why would you be that animal?" She didn't even miss a breath. And she said, "Well, I'd be a bird." And I said, "Really? Why would you be a bird?" And she says, "Well, that way I could look down on people and I could move long distances quickly because I don't like staying in one spot very long." So that was the end of the interview, even though she checked all these boxes. So the owner of that company, again, I was working as a consultant, fractional VP of sales, essentially. He walks by and I'm laughing. I get off the phone and he said, "What are you laughing at?" So I told him the story I just told you. And he said, "All these years we've known each other, I've never asked you that question." He said, "And it's a great question." He said, "So if you were an animal, what animal would you be and why?" I said, "That's easy, pit bull." And he says, "Why is that?" And I said, "Compact, muscular, and deadly freaking loyal. And if you
Mhm.
fuck with me, I'll bite you, sort of thing." And he laughed. He said, "Yeah, that sounds like Chris Evan." So
That's
I said to him,
hysterical.
I said, what would you be?" He says, "Easy German Shepherd." I said, "Figure smarter than a pit bull, huh?" So
I'm
Be
curious what Dr. Dean, what animal would you be?
I would probably be something like a bald eagle, only because I know that they actually fly above everything else, and then when they come down, like it's attack, it's destroy, but they're also extremely loyal. Like if you know that, and loyalty is like not to sound like the parroting what he just said, but like as you know, Nicola, I've said this before behind the scenes. Dr. Jen's out there watching right now, like. My number one thing at the end of the day is like I grew up being extremely loyal to everyone that I worked for because I like there was jobs I shouldn't have been doing, shouldn't have been involved in, nothing bad, nothing illegal, just like because I was loyal to the person. I always, my grandfather taught me mentorship. He taught me all that stuff. So I was like, so for me, it's like, even when Nicolette started the show, like, I'm like, hey, show doesn't make any money 4 years ago. So like, if you're going to work, like, you're just going to do it for fun. And like, and then, you know, loyalty, not because I wanted to do that, but you find out who the people who are really in the trenches with you are. And that's how I've always been, even with employees at the office too. Like, my wife will like, oh, meet so-and-so. I'm like, I'm not meeting them. She's like, what do you mean? I go, I don't want to know anything about them really up front. I want to know how they're going to be after 3 months, how they're going to be after 6 months. Like, if they will go to war with me on a daily basis, stay late, get up early, be here before everybody else. Over time, you'll see that, and that you'll know they're a soldier for you. And then a soldier sometimes become a great leader in the world if you train them up to be. But some people are just soldiers, and that's fine. But you have to find that out. And it's actually funny, Chris. Before I let you go, we said Votech. I forgot this story. In high school, I was like kind of way ahead of everything, and there was this thing called Votech. I didn't really know what it was. I just was like, okay, let me go check it out. And they're like, hey, would you like to like have Fridays where you don't go to school? I'm like, well, I'm already in. What's the deal? Do you remember the company Sylvania, the light company?
Yes. Yep.
So I graduated from a Pennsylvania school, and Sylvania had a manufacturing facility probably about roughly an hour away. I don't remember the town it was in. It was a bigger city in Pennsylvania. And so I signed up to go do it. It was basically, they called it like on the job experience, right? Like, I wasn't doing anything big. It was mostly like internship type stuff. So I signed up for it. So literally the entire year, every Friday, I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I had to be there by 7 a.m. I didn't get to go home until I think it was like 5 in the afternoon. And they moved me different around. I went through, it was a Sylvania manufacturing facility, and like, I did some data entry. I got to look through at different manufacturing stuff, all for light bulbs, etc. And like, I wasn't like part of the team. Like, they didn't bring me in and like, you're an employee now. But man, let me tell you, like, between having to be up at 5 a.m., driving my car an hour through snow and sleet and ice, because there were no days off, legitimately, like, I already had a decent work ethic. But like, just seeing how the world worked, seeing what was behind the scenes, getting up early in the morning, coming home late on a Friday when everyone's already home, like, just changes your world. I totally forgot about that story.
Yeah, Votech was a good thing back in the day. I'll leave you on this. I'll give you a good example of an answer to that question. I was hunting for account executives, and I had this guy come in, and he was decent. I didn't think he was a rock star, but I thought he was decent. I asked him the question, and he said, that's easy. I'd be a Jaguar. And I said, really, why is that? And he says, well, most people think that the cheetah is the fastest cat, and it's not. The Jaguar is the fastest animal on earth. And they kill everything that they want, and they always eat. And that's how I approach sales. I kill everything, and I eat it. I was like, you're hired.
Yeah, that was a great answer.
Happy New Year, sir. We appreciate you. Another year down.
Happy New Year.
Likewise.
Tell your lovely wife who said the same. Bye-bye.
Will do.
Oops, I messed up the screen there. Look at that. There we go. Yeah, like, it's so funny because it's and he comes from a tech world behind the scenes, and it's you know what I loved about that whole thing last week with the H-1B is, you know, we all have a little differing opinions. Even Chris has a little differing opinion than we do, but we're actually at the same base level of the fact that we all know America has a major freaking problem on our hands.
Yeah, 100%.
So like, but it's good to hear that stuff because, like, and I think that was the big problem that day, which for the 48 hours was this group that came out and basically exposed themselves in the conservative world. Like, I don't want to call them necessarily like racist bigots, because that's a big, like, I was feeling that way, but like, I'm not going to label them that. But there was definitely some sort of weird psyop going on, because it became the problem.
Now, have you seen the latest thing?
I don't know, but the problem they had there wasn't that they didn't want to come to the table to discuss it. We might all have a differing opinion what we feel about the H-1B, but the problem was they were all saying, give it to America, give it to America. And our point on it wasn't like, of course we want to give it to America. The problem was the Americans don't have, like, we've lost, like what Chris was saying, we lost generations. Like, you're trying to give it to somebody who isn't skilled to take it on. That's the problem.
Correct. I know. I 100% agree. And as far as something like how I said the graphic, like I have learned, and this is what sets me apart from most of the millennials, is I've learned to dabble um in everything that I do. I'm the type of person that likes to learn at least the basics of every job. I don't care if it's lighting my hot water tank or doing some small electrical
She does
work
love that
in my
stuff. She loves it.
house,
Everybody.
or learning how to make graphics. So when I have somebody coming to me with a big price tag and I feel like I can do it just as well, even if it's going to take me longer, I'm going to figure out how to do it. And this is what I mean by people that are in graphic design or in all of these things. One, you're being replaced by AI. No offense, but you are. While I understand AI isn't up to par, it's learning new things every single day.
Yep.
So to not putting that big price tag on things, and feel like people feel like they're being entitled, or that people are being entitled about their prices. The biggest thing there is you're pushing yourself out of the competitive market that is global. And that's the part that I see a problem with. And back to our conversation about people kind of showing their asses when it came to, oh, well, I want Americans. And it turned out a lot of them were just like, we want whites, because some people are Americans.
Some of them were getting really bad. And they're like, we don't want anybody else with any skin color other than white. I'm like, okay, now like you're literally a bigot at that point.
Vivek is born in Cleveland, Ohio. He's an American, whether people like it or not. And we wouldn't be here. I said this before. We wouldn't be here with all these different cultures because America itself doesn't.
And remember, I don't even like some of the stuff Vivek's done. Like, I don't love that he's a pharmaceutical guy. I don't love that stuff. But dude, when the guy's telling the truth, like, just listen to what the guy is saying. Maybe you'll learn something.
Right. But now the new talking point, and this is what I was getting to, is there's no such thing as the woke right. And I beg to differ. That's like saying black people can't be racist, because they 100% can be. The far right Christian nationalists that want nothing but white Christians is a problem.
Yes.
It is a major problem. And that's not a world I want to live in. And I'll fight against that. So
no, 100%. So, all right. Before we finish today, we got a little time, obviously. Trump is going after Panama. He is going after Greenland, like hardcore, like to the point where I think he already has it in the bag. Like he wouldn't go this hard if he didn't already have it in the bag. Did you see? I did not fully understand it, and I did not go into it deep enough. Maybe you did. Dr. Jen posted a thing yesterday about Canada and being a part under the American corporation, which I'm assuming is the Crown. What did you take from that?
Is under the Corporation of United States.
The Corporation of Canada since 2003, was it? Was under the corporate structure of America.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that means it was under the Crown.
Well, yeah, I mean, so that's where things get a little bit mucky. Hold on a second. Let me pull that up real quick. So this
you pull it up. I'll bring up your screen because
fiscal year end March 31. That was November 1st, 2002.
It does not come down to respect, linear free. It doesn't come down to respect at all. You know what I respect? I respect loyalty. I respect work. No, there's a commenter saying that.
I know. I
sorry,
get it,
it does not come down. Respect is earned over a period of time, and respect is earned by working your ass off, being loyal, being somebody who cares about the quality of something, cares about people, etc. You do not get my respect because you built a product. Like, anybody can build a freaking product. There's lots of shit products out there. Does your product actually solve a major problem over a period of time? And have you gone through the fire to become a person? Like, I don't buy a product because it looks like a stupid product. Like, I buy a product because I personally like the manufacturing and the product, and I like usually the people who actually created it over time.
Also, I don't work in the corporate world, and I never want to. I will be very clear. I don't want to. I'm not like telling the universe to put me in the corporate world because I absolutely don't necessarily want that. However, when somebody comes to me and we've done a little bit here, and even just as a waitress or something, and they're like, oh, here's my full resume, or here's my job application. I actually don't love that as much. Like, I don't want to hire somebody, and that's why I kind of loved Chris's question, because that tells you more about a person than their entire resume does.
Right.
When I came to you to work with BraveTV, it was hey, these are the things I'm really passionate about, and that's something that is going to drive me forward. I see a connection that we can help each other on these things.
Right.
And while, yeah, we fight like brother and sister now because we have that mutual respect, I think that we've both shown our loyalty in the fact, like, hey, I need to get Nicolette, can you get this done? Well, I have no clue how, but I'm going to figure it out.
Right.
I've never told you no.
So that right there, Nicolette, is so priceless, and people need to know that. So, like, for example, I will need something done. I either don't have time to do it, or like it's just not on my radar. It needs to be done by somebody else, right? And I will say to Nicolette, hey, I need this done. What do you need it done by? Well, I mean, maybe tomorrow, but like if today is great. I don't know how to do it. Nicolette does not come to me to find out why. She doesn't ask for me where she should go look it up. She manufactures her ideas and ability to get stuff done on her own. And then she'll say to me 3 hours later, hey, it's done. I did this. And then we'll get on the phone and she'll be like, hey, I'll be like, how did you do it? She goes, went over here, looked this up. That didn't make sense. So I came over here. That right there, everybody. I don't know how, I don't know how I can make this more important. That is the absolute personality that every single producer in this world is looking for. That doesn't make her not a producer. She's a producer and she has her own world that she manufactures too. But working with me, if I need something done, she's a right-hand person. If she has somebody who's a right-hand person, she needs the same thing. But the idea to give somebody to something, I don't have to think about it. Doesn't mean like questions can't be asked, but literally she manufactures the process, research, and the ability to get it done all on her own without needing her handheld. I cannot tell you how much productive type A people that is a dream in America.
And we have that same mentality when it comes to, I don't want to hold people's hands. We've done customer service people and all these other things where, you know, if I have to spell things out to you or tell you, oh, hey, word this email like this, I don't love it. And we've been through that. But that's exactly what I mean by I don't necessarily love resumes, because if you cannot show me yourself outside of those words, that's very much just a blanket, like you probably went online, plugged a few things in, generated a resume off of it, which, oh well, great if those are your actual skills, but I also don't want something that kind of just shows your sheep is not the right word, but just kind of fall in line as far as like, let me list out my stuff. I can't tell a lot from the person's personality. And if there's somebody I want in my foxhole with me based off of a resume, unfortunately. I get it, but that's corporate life. And like I said, I don't. It's like
in the crypto. So it's in the crypto world, Nicolette. So people in the crypto world, people in the crypto community will go. Actually, I shouldn't say that. The people in Prosperity Group already know, and that's why they're in the Prosperity Group, and that's why they love it. Anybody outside the Prosperity Group, you know what they'll do? They'll say, and there's people in our audience, and I'm not going to call you out because I don't know who you are right now based off screen names, but and Dr. Jen can attest to this. How do you do blah blah blah? Like, I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but like you literally have the universe in your hand. So when people go, how do you do blah blah blah? I don't know how to do that. I'm like, well, guess what? I didn't know how to do that either. But guess what I did? On a Saturday afternoon or a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. or a Sunday night or a Monday or whatever day it was, I would take my laptop or I would stand right here at this desk and I would get everything out of the way. I would set the equipment down and I would either go to a YouTube or I'd go to Twitter or I'd go multiple places. And I would watch a 5-minute or a 10-minute or 15-minute video. And then I would slowly take myself through it. And it might be a 3-hour process. It's not going to be 15 minutes. And then slowly over time, I learned how to do it, and then I got faster at it, and then I got even faster, and then I became an expert in doing it. So then when people are like, I don't know how to do it, and I'm like, did you even do the first thing that I did, which was like quiet everything down, go to a video, go to other people, see if they're doing it, and then even if they're not, oh my God, I actually went to certain websites and I would look it up and I'd go, okay, let me take the first step. I'm going to do this with $20, not $2,000. And I made plenty of mistakes. I'm like, oh, can't do that. Let me go back to that square one. Now I got it, right? Like, it's all life is trial and error until you.
It is trial and error.
Like,
and a great
I don't know why people don't
crypto.
get this when they're like, well, how do you do blood? It's called why don't you do some trial and error in your life?
I lost my casino coins. I have no clue what happened to them when we bought them on that one thing, and then we were supposed to like move them off, and I have no clue what happened to them. I didn't have much. I didn't stake anything that I couldn't afford to lose. But like Dr. Jen this morning posted something about the safe harbor stuff.
Yeah.
I have no clue. That talk was over my head. You know what I did? I screenshot her comments, and now I'm gonna go look it up because I was like, hey, she says, and this is, I guess they'll probably go into this more on prosperity, I'm assuming. But the screenshot of what you hold, I was like, wait, my app doesn't allow for screenshotting. So how do I go about doing this? So I have to look that up. That's something that I have to do today. And it's the same with anything that we do. But here is the biggest thing. And I think this is a world that we're going into. Hopefully, we're getting back to it. We need to get back to major discernment. I think that's the reason why people aren't looking things up. People aren't looking up how to do crypto because they get overwhelmed. They have no clue where to start. They don't know who, like, okay, some people are just day trading crypto, like they're stock brokers or whatever, like all of these different things, and they don't have a basis to start on what's true and what's not. And and that's just one example, whether it's crypto, whether it's information about the fog, as we were talking earlier. People don't have a basis of truth to discern from. And until you educate yourself, as we were saying earlier, to kind of, once you do this enough, you kind of sniff out the BS. You don't have that basis. You're not going to have basis unless it's something. If it's brand new information to you, then you don't have that basis, which is why you have to do the research for yourself. You can't have somebody telling you what to do, because that's 100%. How people get taken advantage of. That's how work doesn't get done. That's how you just become a follower. We definitely need to go back into major discernment, which many people thought they were with 2020, but it went complete opposite, if you ask me.
Before we go, so President Trump really wants to own all the resources. We are going for, I don't want to call it a land grab. I actually don't think it's a land grab, because a lot of people will be like, why does he want all these? I think it's reclaiming what's ours and breached contracts.
Yeah, so technically that 100% is. When I was looking things up yesterday, it started with us talking about radiation, and I looked up the radiation medications that were given to Congress and the Senate and why they bought a bunch out in 2022 in satellite phones. And then it led me back to the Carter stuff with the Soviet Union and then SALT Treaty and all this other stuff. I looked up the 3 manufacturers that are FDA approved. Only one of them is in the United States. They're in Williamsburg, Virginia, and something else. I want to say Alabama or something like that. Those are the only 2 places in the United States that are creating anti-radiation medication, which equals potassium iodide. That's what those capsules are, potassium iodide, and that led my train of thought to go to, do you remember when Russia, everybody was freaking out because, Russia owns most of the world's fertilizer. And I was like, well, what fertilizer is it that's so important? And I went back to Massey's tweets, because Massey was concerned about it as far as growing food. And somebody's like, oh, well, we can make it in a lab. And he goes, there's more things than just nitrogen that are needed. And particularly, it's something called potash, which is potassium chloride and stuff, which is used to make this potassium iodide that helps people with radiation.
Mm-hmm.
But where is this radiation coming from? And so then I was looking up places that have the highest uranium. And it happens to be Greenland, Ukraine, I don't know how to, it starts with a K, something to Stan.
Kazakhstan?
Something like that. All of these places where we've seen war regularly, or we've seen these treaties of us fighting over, like, oh, Trump is saying that he's going to own it and stuff. So as I'm looking at these things, I was like, you know what? Do you guys remember when Trump regularly said they don't pay their bills? America pays for everybody. We pay.
Yep.
We are their army. We are their military. We protect them, and they don't pay their bills. So what happens when you default on a loan?
What happens when you default on a loan? The bank takes it back.
Yep, repossession. So, why should
are we repossessing?
Maybe. Plus, none of NATO. NATO is very specifically the one where he's like, they're not paying. They're not paying their bills.
So if we took the crown back from the crown
to the monarchy, yep,
and we now actually control the bank and the Federal Reserve System and Treasury, then that means we are the bank we can repossess.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Correct. But almost all of the EU and or NATO would fall under that as well.
Yeah, dude, we would take everything.
This is the major fight over Ukraine right now. I don't this can blow people's minds to an extent, because I was like, maybe we need those biolabs to make this potassium iodide, being that they're so rich with these things, as well as Russia. Well, Russia didn't want NATO to come into Ukraine, correct? That's what Putin kept saying. Well, Putin's also saying that the globalists are done. Okay, well, you still have Ukraine as an outlier that either is going to belong to Russia or it's going to belong to the EU and NATO, which I think we've already technically repossessed. And I'm not saying this because I want Trump to be this all-world ruler. However, none of these people have followed the laws or treaties that they've made. So, in a world with law and order, what happens? We return order. So I think this is one of the major things over Ukraine is, hey, this goes back to Clinton with Uranium One and all these other things, where we have to control those uranium substrates and stuff that are under the ground, so the globalists didn't get their hands on it.
So I have something I have to flip on now then.
Okay.
This is painful for me to say. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
This means it doesn't matter how much money we print.
Correct.
Do you know why?
Which is why it hasn't imploded.
Do you know why?
It doesn't technically mean anything.
No, because the money is only a problem when you can't back it up with anything. Meaning there's
Correct.
Okay, we all know gold standard, right? Like gold standard is that it's the well-known thing. It's not just gold though. Land backs up money. Your home, equity in your home backs up money. Meaning if you bought a house for $500,000, you paid down to $250,000, and you can go in and go, hey, I'd like to do a loan. I want to do a revamp of the house. I want $50,000. They're like, yeah, you have equity in here. Here's the $50,000. Go build it. You're going to bring the equity up higher, right? So it's not just gold standard that actually makes the money float. It's also land, right? So the fact that, yes, we're throwing money left and right, back and forth, etc. However, if you woke up next month and you have ownership of the Panama Canal, potential some sort of either strategic partnership or ownership of Canada, and you have Greenland. By the way,
Canada also has a giant uranium deposit.
By the way, all filthy rich with oil and natural resources. Guess what? The printing of the Federal Reserve note at that point doesn't matter because we can back everything up.
Correct.
And that actually, you know what else that does? That will drop the prices of all of our products. Like Remember how they said it might go back to 1960s, 70s prices? Nicolette, the price of gas is going to plummet.
So let me put it into a little bit different perspective, just for people to understand. Because right now it kind of seems like everybody's fighting over resources and all this other thing. We've talked about this before. The world is extremely abundant. So you're not going to run out of water because
Not
you
running
keep
out of
the
anything.
water. Yeah, because you keep the water on when you brush your teeth. You're not going to run out of oil because
And we have
it's
there's still a lot of gold. Like, just because we don't have possession of it.
dinosaur. There's tons of gold. So when we talk about different landscapes and taking over these different parts, a lot of these things are because of the elements and what that land provides. When you bought, if somebody were to buy a few acres in, say, Oklahoma,
Shut the lights off. Lizzie says, "Shut the lights off."
they were to buy a few acres of land in Oklahoma. Okay, you paid X amount. Oh, well, then you accidentally you struck oil on your land. Your land just exponentially went up. We have this world where everybody's kind of like, here's my pile. And this is the banks. These are the central banks. This is my pile. I want to dominate. I'm going to keep my pile, but I'm going to keep taking from yours and I'm going to keep borrowing. But there's no need for that. And I'm going to flip the script on people because this is a very like DEI type of term, but equity and equality. It's not equality. We're going to equity. And this has always been a thing where it's going to balance the playing field. All of these different lands have their own resources. This is the trade amongst people. The diamond industry is a very good example of this. The people that bought all the diamonds had these mines, put them away to make them more rare.
Yep.
Okay, but if we were to spread that wealth out, everybody could have a diamond. Nobody's really rich on it. Nobody's making the extra money off of it. But it still holds value because it's a rare mineral and it can be used for things. So this is what we're going to do with oil. This is what we're going to do with copper. These things have all been withheld from the rest of the world. Panama Canal is, withholding this copper. There's no reason why anybody should have a copper shortage, a steel shortage, an oil shortage. We shouldn't be fighting over these things and taking over land for these things unless that person doesn't want to relinquish it. As Biden, or you guys just saw, we didn't want... Haven't you guys always heard, well, we don't want to tap America stuff. We want to use the rest of the world's first because we want to, reserve ours. We don't want us to run out of oil. Why would we do that?
This also, you know what this takes us back to? What we talked about, we've been on, oh my God, this is why I get frustrated with viewership. Not because I don't love our viewers, because my God, it's on the truth. Like, remember we talked a couple of years ago about Gaddafi, and I was like, this is all tied. Like, this is what, Trump knew Gaddafi. Gaddafi was doing the right thing. Nicolette, we are going to turn America into essentially the next Dubai.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do. And it might be bigger than Dubai. When he says new cities, new technologies, my God, it's going to be so massive in America.
With releasing these things that have been kept in vaults and storage and kept from the world, similar to the diamonds, like I said, we can untap these potentials. When we talk about something like a quantum computer, and I mean a physical quantum computer that runs at high energy or things to mine for Bitcoin or whatever it is, you need something that can withstand temperatures. You need something that can withstand that rapid rate as we go forward into these things. Once we unlock these minerals and stuff, we have that to then turn into technology and people. That's how we get the flying car. That's how we get all of these things, is untapping those things that have been suppressed. So this is very much why this NATO thing has to end. NATO is very good of being very selfish with things, including their own payments. So that's just Sarah. For people that don't understand, this global treaty of trade your elements. There's no reason. We've talked about it before. Africa, one of the highest places for elements, minerals, you name it, should not be a third world country. I know Africa isn't a country. You guys get where I'm going with that, though.
The countries of the continent of Africa and the countries of Africa should not be third world. They should be the richest. They should be the richest continent on the planet.
Right. They should not have no running water and all the, oh, we have to save them and we have to go vaccinate them. You know that was literally like NATO and the EU's way of keeping them suppressed where we can steal their minerals. But what if there's just a mutual agreement of, hey, you help raise our countries up here in Africa, we'll share our minerals with the world.
It's pretty simple.
That's how it should be.
Everybody, Happy New Year. Enjoy tomorrow. Well, whatever tomorrow is. It's just a day. Rock and roll. Let's have some fun.
Everybody stay safe. Have a good New Year.
Big change is coming. Big change is coming. All good changes. And you will see on the other side of everything. And anything else?
No, everybody just stay safe. I understand even if you're not partying, there's a lot of crazies on the road on New Year's. But I look forward to the next year. I'll be here tomorrow. Are you going to be here tomorrow?
No.
Why?
I'm supposed to take the day off.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm supposed to do something. I'm supposed to do something family oriented. That's what I was told. You can have the show if you want.
I was gonna say I'll do the show tomorrow. That's fine.
Nicolette will be here
Happy
tomorrow.
New Year. We'll talk about 2024 in review tomorrow then. And
there you go.
Going forward.
Love, serve, and help, everybody. You'll see Nicolette tomorrow. Dr. Jason Dean. That's Nicolette. Have a nice New Year's Eve celebration tonight. Be safe. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.